My guest today on the Neil Wilkins podcast is Damien Schreurs. Now, Damien is a continuous learner and self-proclaimed passionate educator. He's the Explainer-in-Chief of EasyTECH, a company providing IT training and coaching on Apple products, Microsoft Office, cybersecurity, and AI. Damien hosts the Macpreneur, if I say this correctly, podcast and features practical tips, effective strategies, and insightful interviews to help people save time and money running their business on a Mac. Welcome to the podcast, Damien.
Thank you for having me, Neil.
Yeah, well, I kind of almost pronounced the podcast correctly. Macpreneur. It's quite a thing to say, isn't it? Really?
Yes.
Yeah, all good. So, Mac, all things Mac. We're here to kind of, I guess, discuss what marketers can do, getting the best from their Mac. I mean, obviously, a lot of marketers do use Mac computers. They're probably on iPhones. They probably got the whole kind of Mac or Apple suite of products and services. I know I have and have done now for many, many years. But I always get the feeling with Mac that there's just that one extra thing every time that it's capable of doing. And I'm probably not doing anything more than really, even after all these years, scratching the surface of what's possible. Am I probably correct with that?
Yeah. Most people that I meet or teach or coach, they typically just use 20% of the capabilities, sometimes less than that. And it's because not everything is easily findable, right? That's the thing. It's like visiting a country. You have to plan to plan the visit, and you have maybe to ask a guide or a travel agency or something like that, and now maybe ChatGPT, but to help you find nuggets that maybe very few people know about.
It kind of feels like that, doesn't it? I mean, I guess back in the day when I was using kind of Windows computers, obviously using all the Microsoft kind of suite, it kind of felt really kind of obvious. That's very nuts and bolts. It's very straightforward. You click here, you know where your maximize and minimize buttons are, and they're obviously on the opposite side to the Mac and things. But it just felt kind of very simple, very straightforward. And yes, with things like Excel, you could go super deep and run super complex, macros and things and really go kind of deep. But for most of us, we were probably using 60 to 70% of the capability. But when you move over to Mac, I think for a lot of people, it's like, whoa, this is a stylish environment. It's very elegant. It is very nice to use. The actual experience of living with a Mac sort of day in, day out is kind of very comfortable, isn't it? But we don't kind of see everything. It's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? Is it a lot more about style over function, do you think?
I compare that to driving from Europe to the UK, actually. And when you are used to drive on the left side of the road or the right side of the road, in my case, right? I'm used to that, and then I cross the channel, and then I'm on the M1, and now I have to change my habits of looking the opposite side. And when I'm on the motorway, I hope my wife sees what's behind the truck when I want to overtake, and that's a bit similar. Yeah. You have to take new habits, but also what I see people struggle the most is file management, and I'm not sure it's a Mac thing. I think it's a generic file management thing that the marketers, the entrepreneurs that I see do not necessarily have a good filing system to start with. And I see a lot of chaos on the desktop. I see files in Dropbox, in Google Drive, locally on their computer. And there's a bit of that as well. And as soon as they switch from a Windows PC to the Mac and they have to deal with Finder, again, it's a similar interface, but still there are some things that they might miss, or habits the keyboard shortcuts they may be using that they can't use anymore.
It kind of requires quite a bit of planning, doesn't it? As with all good things. I mean, I think anybody who jumps straight in and thinks, oh, it's all going to be fine, it will sort it for me. It doesn't kind of work like that, does it, really? We have to have a strategy, don't we? It's like in life. Any good project that is going to be delivered needs to have some kind of strategy to it. So where would somebody start then if they're looking to migrate? Let's kind of go right back to almost the beginning of that relationship with a Mac. Where's a good place to begin to plan kind of what you're going to need in the future?
So I think, first of all, it's always better to have a cloud storage system in place, or a cloud storage provider. Right? It could be OneDrive if they are fully in the Microsoft ecosystem, but a lot of entrepreneurs, marketers, they love Google. Right? Google Workspace, they're on Gmail, they love the Google Doc, and to actually collaborate on Google Docs, Google Sheets, and stuff like that. So I think that's already a good starting point. If they have an iPhone, they may already be using iCloud Drive, maybe without realizing it, but they have an iCloud account. And that also makes the migration much, much easier. So I would say step one is do a kind of inventory of the business important critical files, right? All your files, your folders, see where are they scattered, and put them in that one single cloud storage location. It will help you tremendously, because when you will buy your Mac, your first Mac, then the only thing you need to do, if you chose iCloud Drive, well, you have nothing to do actually. You boot up the Mac, you enter your iCloud account, your Apple account, and Apple ID password, and all your files will automatically get downloaded onto your Mac if you use iCloud Drive. But then afterwards, if you use Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive, it's a matter of visiting that provider's website, downloaded the desktop synchronization application, and once again, after a few minutes, you will see all your files. And it doesn't matter how much is there. You could have 1.5 terabyte in the cloud, and you only have a Mac with 512 gigabyte of storage or 256 gigabyte of storage. It doesn't matter, because those cloud services now allow you to what they call stream files. So you can see everything, and when you need them, you can ask to download them.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the whole idea of having this one account, I don't know kind of where it happened or how it happened, but I seem to have 3 different iCloud stroke iTunes, because back in the day, iTunes was different to iCloud, was different to my actual Mac kind of account, it seemed. So I think I've got these kind of 3 accounts. So photos appear sometimes, some places, but not elsewhere. It feels just kind of a little bit of a soup, should we say, where things don't necessarily match what I'm expecting to see. Is that typical, or is it kind of now kind of quite simple that if you have one account, it will then proliferate across all of your devices? Because mine are really confused. My iPhone doesn't necessarily act in the same way as my Mac does, and my Apple Watch is completely different again. So they're all kind of talking a different database in many ways. It's a real problem when you get to that stage.
Yeah, it's a big problem for people who have a long history with Apple. So you've been using Macs for 30 years, so it even predates iCloud. You could have maybe used already .Mac, the .Mac system.
Yeah.
And there were another system before iCloud, and unfortunately for a while Apple didn't have what is called today iCloud family sharing. So it was very, very difficult to share content that you would buy or rent on the iTunes store, that also afterwards you could buy movies. And so the trick, what people were doing, let's say 15 years ago, was to have 2 Apple accounts, one personal account and then a family account. And you could, on the iPhone or the Mac, you could configure both separately. So you could say, for my personal account, I will synchronize my contacts, calendar, iCloud mail, notes. But then for the content, the digital content, I will then use that second account. And it's only very recently that Apple is now allowing to merge iCloud accounts. So it's possible now to ask Apple, I have those two accounts. Can you get rid of the legacy one with the content, migrate all the content to my personal account? But there are a lot of caveats, a lot of asterisks. I don't know them by heart. You need to go to the Apple site for that, but there are a bunch of restrictions that actually prevent you from doing that. First of all, they need to be associated with the same country. Now, as we talked in the pre-show, my wife is British. I still have a UK linked Apple account where I have a lot of movies and music and thing. And unfortunately, I will never be able to merge that with my Luxembourg Apple account, because that's one of the restrictions in the merging. So I still have an Apple TV where this old UK-based account is connected to, so that I can access movies and TV shows that I've bought in the past.
It's complicated, isn't it? It's an interesting one, but I'm glad it's not me, because I always thought, oh, it's me. There's something I'm not doing, but you've put my mind at rest there in terms of, okay, it's been the migration away from these kind of legacy systems that Apple has kind of done, and maybe they're not played catch up very comfortably with, those of us who have been around quite a long time. But let's assume that most of the people listening and watching this are kind of either in a single kind of iCloud account, or they're in a Mac environment that they've just moved into. One of the things that obviously is quite important here is this whole idea of kind of being able to run potentially work stuff and personal stuff on the same machine. Now, for me, the way I do it is very much have, again, this folder system where things are very much differentiated. So I've got personal and work, two very different kind of, not profiles, but very different areas of my Mac. And I'm using multiple dashboards and multiple windows to kind of keep things very, very separate and clean, so I can keep my mind very separate. And I guess if you're a very planful person, that's quite a comfortable way of doing it. But if you're not very planful and you just do things in the moment, how can you start to kind of manage that? Because if we're using a single device for lots of different kind of applications and lots of different uses, how can we best kind of almost manage that process?
Mm-hmm. So on the iCloud side of things, a local Mac user account can only have one primary iCloud account connected to it. So for synchronizing, again, notes, contacts, calendars, but more importantly, iCloud photos, right? This is usually the people who have an iPhone, marketers. They take pictures and then they want their pictures to be on their Mac, to be use them someplace else. For that, you can only have one iCloud account connected to a Mac user account. So one technique would be to create a secondary local user account on the Mac and connect that user account to the other iCloud account. But again, it's a bit of a kludge, and you have to switch from one user account to another. So it's not really a good system. It's possible to connect multiple iCloud accounts inside the same local user account on the Mac, but you are limited to what you can synchronize. So you can't synchronize notes, but you can synchronize contacts and calendars. But again, not files, not iCloud Drive. So one strategy would be to actually dedicate a cloud account that is not iCloud, like Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, for the personal stuff. And the good news is you can have, so for instance, I still have one foot in the Microsoft ecosystem because I actually teach I do corporate training on Microsoft Excel, Word, PowerPoint, but the Windows version of that. So I need to be still in that ecosystem as well. I have OneDrive. I have actually two OneDrive icons on the menu bar at the top of my Mac, one connected to a personal Microsoft account and another one connected to a business professional Microsoft account. And they are clearly separated in Finder on my Mac, and I can go to one or the other. And so that's also a solution rather than putting everything in your same iCloud Drive, Google Drive, OneDrive. You connect multiple accounts and you let them synchronize in parallel.
So there gives you a chance to kind of sort of manage those two elements. So I guess for somebody who is maybe becoming a bit of a power user of things like Microsoft Teams, for example, because, you know, if we're talking to a marketer or entrepreneur who's in a larger organization, and maybe they have a larger business, a lot of those larger businesses are in Microsoft environments. So even though we might be using an Apple product, it is probably going to be in a Microsoft environment, which again changes things, doesn't it? Because it works. You can have Teams, you can have obviously all the Microsoft kind of Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and all those things work. What's your view on how well they work? Because I'm a little bit mixed when it comes to using Teams on the Mac, because it doesn't seem to necessarily have all the functionality of maybe a Windows-based environment.
Yeah, so that's a common theme across the board. So whether even with Excel and Word and PowerPoint, they don't have feature parity with the Windows version of those apps. They're pretty close, but stuff is missing on the Mac version versus the Windows version. So that's a fact. Having said that, they are already pretty good, and I actually recommend installing the native desktop versions on the Mac rather than rely on Microsoft Edge and try to do everything through the browser. Maybe for Microsoft Teams, for the if they need to communicate with clients or partners over Teams in channels, yeah, maybe Microsoft Edge would work. And actually, that's a side note. They should install Microsoft Edge and not use Safari, because Microsoft Edge first has better compatibility with all the web tools from Microsoft, but also like Google Chrome, it's actually based on the Chromium engine, so it has the kind of same web standards and compatibility as Google Chrome. But because it's Microsoft, you can configure your Microsoft account to synchronize your bookmarks, your passwords, and so on. And you can, like with Chrome, create multiple profiles. So that's maybe a hack for Mac users. Download Microsoft Edge, and then if you have multiple accounts, because let's say if you are a marketer and you work as an external subcontractor for a bunch of companies, those larger organizations, they will not let you connect with your account. They will create an account for you, and you will end up with maybe 5 Microsoft accounts, each for one client, each for different clients, sorry. And so the trick is you install Edge and you create profiles, one for each client. And whenever you want to access Teams or OneDrive files or SharePoint for that client, you just switch to that profile. But now if we come back to the native applications, the temptation when you are still halfway in the Microsoft ecosystem, especially for iPhone users that do not have a Mac yet, they still have a Windows PC, is that they may have configured in Apple Mail all their Microsoft accounts. And so when they switch to the Mac, the temptation is to do the same now with Apple Mail on the Mac. And that's where problems start to happen. The way Apple has integrated those synchronization engine is not 100% perfect. And I have a few clients on the coaching side, and when they call me, is typically, Damien, I don't understand. I create I send an email. I don't see all my emails in Apple Mail, or they also do it with the Apple Calendar, right? So they try to synchronize the Microsoft Calendar with Apple Calendar, and they say, I create an event on my MacBook, and I don't see it on the iMac. What's happening? And it's a synchronization issue. And invariably, what I tell my clients is, please install Outlook. Install the native Outlook app on all your Macs, connect to your Microsoft account via Outlook. And because Outlook has a much better synchronization engine with the Microsoft servers. And yes, the Mac version of Outlook is not as powerful as the Windows version of Outlook, but it's much better than rely on Apple's goodwill to try to synchronize data between an Apple application on the Mac with a Microsoft backend service.
Oh, that's great advice. Yeah, that Outlook link. I was going to ask about Outlook because obviously that has been the big daddy of applications in Microsoft's view for many, many years. But it's interesting to see that is now the bridge, that is effective, still for linking those two environments. I just wanted to pick up on you mentioned briefly there Safari, which for those in the audience not aware, that Safari is the native Apple browser, which comes as default when you have your Mac, and for many of us, it is a kind of a go-to kind of browser. I find myself, I've never migrated away. There are 100 reasons why I should have probably migrated away to Google Chrome, probably as being that one, or even Edge now, obviously having, as you say, clients with Teams accounts, and I need to kind of integrate and work with them. And that is absolutely what I need to do as well. But I've never really gone to Google Chrome, whereas the rest of the world seems to be on Chrome. What am I missing? I mean, is Safari still okay? Because it doesn't always work with every single website, with every single application, and yet I still feel very tied to it. Mm-hmm. What's happening there?
Yeah, Safari is ideal when you are fully in the Apple ecosystem. So you only have an iPhone and maybe an iPad and a couple of Macs. That's okay. That's a good way of dealing with the web, especially if you're privacy conscious. And I would say even when we talk about protecting the confidential information from your clients, still today, Safari for me is number one, Firefox is number two, and then you have Edge and Chrome. Now, I think the appeal of Chrome was the plugin or the extension ecosystem. So the reason why I'm still, well, it's twofold actually. It's this extension ecosystem, so the things that you can install on top of Chrome that help you do things and add capabilities to Gmail or to synchronize your tasks. And when you visit a website, you can quickly convert it to a task or send it to another web service. So this is the one thing. The second thing is for people like me, who I'm still in the Google Workspace camp. So I have a Google Workspace for Business account for EasyTECH. And that's my primary account. I have a Microsoft for Business, but that's just to help me with my training sessions, basically. But I'm still in the Google ecosystem. And Chrome is the only browser that allows me, again, to have multiple profiles. I have many Google accounts. I have my business account, and I have a personal account, and I have a family account. And so the ability, like Edge, to create profiles with separate bookmarks and extensions and history and password vault, that also is very attractive. So that's why I've installed Chrome. And then there are cases, and especially for marketers, right? Marketers who go on podcasts that are hosted by with Riverside, or that host the podcast on Riverside, they can't use Safari. Safari, Firefox, not supported. They need a Chromium browser. So they need either Chrome or Edge to record their podcast or to appear on the podcast.
It's a bit of a balance here, isn't it? And I guess if you've got bookmarks and favorites, as you say, within Safari that and use every day, maybe multiple times every day, I mean, I guess then it is just a case of literally copying those across to the other browsers so you can continue. But again, with history and this, that, and the other, you're going to kind of lose it. Again, it gets complicated, doesn't it? Is this really about almost prioritizing what is most important? Because it feels like there are multiple choices here: choice of browser, choice of, well, in effect, operating system, choice of email, whether it's cloud-based or Mac mail, etc. Is this about kind of trying out, maybe in the early days, all the different options and then saying, actually, the one that fits most of the work that I do is this one. Okay, I will now stick with this one. And just being kind of almost ruthless with your choices here, because otherwise the machine just becomes, overburdened with, applications and links and everything.
Yeah. The number one risk or danger is shiny object syndrome, right? So it's always tempting. It could be tempting, and especially when we are entrepreneur, we like to we are pretty curious, I think. And so that's the risk. But again, if something works, don't break it, right? Keep what's working. And on the flip side, if you are frustrated because you use Safari, exclusively Safari, and you notice that some things are not working also on some websites, then I would say frustration is maybe the right trigger for you to look for something else. But again, I advise against like moving everything across again, right? So find what's okay. For that, I'm comfortable with Safari. For that other thing now, like I say, Riverside, you can't actually join a Riverside recording with Safari. So now you have to decide, do I download Chrome? Do I download Edge? And I would say for people who are still halfway in the Microsoft ecosystem, it's actually better to download Edge, Microsoft Edge, than Chrome, because first of all, you will be able to synchronize and create a Microsoft profile. But on top of that, what maybe people do not necessarily know is Edge is cross-compatible with all the extensions from Chrome. So you can go with Microsoft Edge to the Chrome Web Store. There is a toggle somewhere. You have to tell Edge to allow the download and installation from the Chrome Web Store. But once you do that, you can install any Chrome extension on your Edge browser on your Mac. So that could be actually maybe a good middle ground for people who are not at all in the Google ecosystem. Would be to do that, yeah.
Wow, these are just such great tips, Damien. And it's so helpful to kind of just spot things or hear things that you didn't realize you needed, but now when you hear it, you think, I needed to do that. I need to do that now. So yeah, this is really, really helpful. I mean, to me personally, I'm kind of using this as a little bit of a coaching session for myself here, to be fair. And I was hoping that other people benefit from it, because I'm sure people, obviously will be doing very similar work to me. So we'll be probably feeling some of the same frustrations and pains and joys of, using the Mac. But yeah, there are certain things which obviously, almost we don't realize we don't know, which is key. I got another question I've got for you, and I'm just kind of glancing down at the bottom of my screen here, because I have this bar full of downloaded desktop versions of pretty much everything I do. And the one that always jumps out at me, because it is the homepage on my Safari browser, which is ChatGPT. So that is my home. That is what I always come to. I've got this really now intimate relationship with ChatGPT for all my work, all my personal life as well, just pretty much everything I do, turning into this hybrid human. But I've also got the desktop version. And now when I have a desktop version of something, I'm always expecting it to be better than the browser-based version, particularly on a Mac, because you sort of sit there, you spend time downloading, you click and drag across into your applications folder, and then you think, right, now this is going to supercharge the experience. But with something like, and I'll just use ChatGPT, which I know and love so well on the browser, the desktop version is much, much weaker. It just doesn't respond in the same way. I don't get the level of control over which version of ChatGPT I'm using, etc., etc. So I'm only using that one as an example. Is that typical, though, that a lot of the desktop apps are almost lower level versions of the full web experience? Because certainly with ChatGPT, I tend to not use the desktop version for that reason.
It's a common theme for multi-platform web services and applications. There is a how do I say that? The counter example would be actually Apple only apps or Mac only apps, right? That those tend to be very good and actually offer more than the web equivalent. An example of that would be Ecamm Live could be an example. Apple Notes is another example, right? Every kind of service that is synchronized through iCloud, you can go to iCloud.com and you can see your calendar and you can see your mail and stuff like that. But the desktop version is much more powerful. As soon as you have applications that are cross-platform or web services that are cross-platform, I'm using, for instance, Toggle. Maybe marketers, they need to track their time, right, for client work, for billing the clients afterwards, right? I'm using Toggle for that, Toggle Track. The Mac application is not good, and there are many things that I can't do on. I need to, if I want to do some reporting and export a CSV of all the time that I've done, or all the time that I've tracked for a specific project or client. There's no choice. I need to go and open the browser. And so, but Toggle, right, the strength of Toggle is it's available on Windows, on Android, on Mac, on iPhone, on iPad. It's available everywhere, right? So there's this compromise of, okay, if you need to be cross-platform, they will not necessarily invest a lot of time in developing the Mac, or to really fully exploit the Mac capabilities in app development. So that's more a developer effort, how much a developer makes to develop, to write an application. The counterbalance to that would be, for me, the desktop, the Claude desktop app. So I've switched personally from ChatGPT to Claude. One of the reasons is, so Neil, if you say I have installed the desktop version of ChatGPT, it means that you have one of the newest Apple Silicon Macs, a Mac with an Apple chip. And believe it or not, OpenAI has not released a desktop version of the ChatGPT app for still the old Intel Macs. I'm recording this episode from an iMac from 2020, which still has an Intel chip. But Anthropic, the developer of Claude, they have developed an application that runs on still the old Intel platform and the Mac Silicon and the Apple Silicon Macs. And I would say what's stunning is that the desktop application of Claude is actually more powerful than accessing Claude from the browser. The total opposite from ChatGPT.
Isn't
And
that interesting?
the appeal, the reason why you still may want to use and decide whether you want to use the desktop version of ChatGPT versus the web version of ChatGPT is, do you need ChatGPT to be able to interact with local applications? So it has some native, I think it works in Apple Notes. So you can tell ChatGPT, the desktop version, that I'm in Apple Notes. It sees that you are in Apple Notes, and maybe you have an outline for a blog post or a newsletter. You could ask ChatGPT, please look at that outline in that note and create a draft script or a draft intro and a hook and a foreshadow for me. And it will do it immediately inside Apple Notes. So you don't need to copy, paste into Apple Notes. So that would be maybe the use cases for the desktop version of ChatGPT.
Interesting, really interesting, and I'm also very interested in the fact you've migrated from GPT over to Claude. Yeah, there's a lot of a wave of, I think, that happening now, particularly in business circles. I think a lot of the Claude capability seems to be really kind of quite powerful right now. So, and on the topic of AI, I mean, it is a big thing that's missing, isn't it? Really, from the Mac. I mean, there's been talk, obviously, about how slow Apple have been to introduce AI, Apple Intelligence, as they're calling it. I mean, that's bold in itself, but introducing that on, say, the iPhone, which, using Siri as an example, I'm hoping just now I've said the word, it won't trigger off. No, it didn't. That's good. Because I always find that as soon as I say it, that everything starts talking around me. But it didn't, so that's helpful. So it hasn't kind of arrived there. There were big promises last autumn that it was going to be here. Then we haven't seen anything this year at all. But now with the change in leadership in Apple, there's a kind of a general consensus. We are going to start to see a lot more kind of product focus, new product, and almost certainly new kind of AI focus. I mean, what is your view on AI on the Mac? Because it's not like AI as in Copilot within the Microsoft suite, is it at all?
No. It's, first of all, it's a mixed bag, and also I would say there's a misunderstanding of what Apple stands for versus the Frontier Labs, and it's, for me, it's like an unwarranted expectation, right? Because Apple is in the GAFA acronym, it doesn't mean that Apple needs to provide exactly the same thing as everybody else in the tech industry, right? And it's like Wall Street or tech experts or pundits, like expecting Apple to compete head to head with ChatGPT or with OpenAI, Anthropic, and even Google. But that's never been their business model, ever. They're a hardware company, right? They sell iPhones, iPads, Macs, Apple Watches, AirPods. They're primarily a hardware manufacturer, and even I would even argue to say they're a consumer hardware manufacturer. So yes, they call some of their devices with a Pro, right? They have MacBook Pros, iPhone, iPhone Pro, and stuff like that. But really, it's mostly prosumer. Let's say prosumer, right? They are prosumer hardware company. What also people tend to miss completely is that nowadays, today, the Mac is the best hardware platform to run AI models locally. And it has had for since 2010? Yeah, 2010 on the iPhone, and then a little bit later, 2014 on the iPhone, 2020 on the Mac, a part of the chip that is called the neural engine. And it's a dedicated part that is for machine learning tasks. So actually for the old kind of artificial intelligence, not the generative AI stuff, but more the trying to understand and make correlations between things. And so for a very long time, iPhones, iPads, Macs, for instance, in Apple Photos, they would quietly, in the background, go through all your photo library, and they would classify, they would find faces, and they would group people based on the face, and they do face recognition. They do object recognition. Now they do pet recognition. So you can create, I have a cat called Alma, it's a black European cat. I've created an album in Apple Photos named Alma. I've selected a few pictures of Alma to feed the AI, the machine learning algorithm. And now every time I take a picture of my cat, that picture will land in that album, right? And that's one of the old use cases of AI. And if we talk about now generative AI and more importantly, large language models like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, well, again, both the GPU and the neural engine are super useful to run models locally. So maybe some marketers in the audience, when they work for a client, the client had made them sign an agreement not to use the cloud LLMs, right? Do not use our data. We don't want our data to be sent to OpenAI servers or Anthropic servers or Google servers. And so if they say, look, I have installed a tool like Olama. There is another tool called LM Studio. There is another tool called Yan. And those tools allow you to download local open weight model. It's not open source technically, but it's called open weight. And obviously they are not as capable of the frontier models today. But if what you need to do is simply do some kind of grammar checking or rewriting or summarizing or creating a bulleted list of something, even a first draft of a script, that's actually good enough. And the data never leaves the machine. You can even disconnect your Mac from the Wi-Fi network, no internet connectivity, and it runs on device. What Apple, if we come back to the Apple conversation, where is Apple in AI today? Apple has now in macOS and iOS provided local models that are very small, but for this kind of task, they are good enough. And maybe it's a hidden gem. I don't know many people. I don't know if people who have a Mac know that. Maybe let me ask you a question, Neil. Are you using the Shortcuts app on your Mac?
No.
So
no, I promised myself that I would, and it's the same on my phone. I promised myself that I would, and I've never done it. I've never set it up. So I know it's there, but I've never done it.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, the Shortcuts app originated on the iPhone, and it's a way to do like little automations on your iPhone. And you can get data from a website and automatically put it in Apple Notes. You can even get shortcuts to be kind of interactive, ask you a bunch of questions, and then do something. And you can do if, then, else, and stuff like that. So it's a relatively powerful capability. I had one client who needed to do to convert movies into GIF images. There's an action, a built-in action for that, right? So, and you can even make it in such a way that as soon as you take you record the movie, that it does the thing, right? You have also local automations. For instance, when you leave the house, you could say, turn off the Wi-Fi on my iPhone automatically, and stuff like that. Shortcuts is on the Mac, right, for a few years now. What Apple has done very quietly is to allow, with the latest version of macOS, to allow to run Apple Intelligence capabilities and actions from within shortcuts. And what it means, a practical example, I've created a shortcut that can automatically rename images that land on inside a folder, or that manually I say right click, please run that AI renaming shortcut. What it does is that if in the picture there is some text, it will OCR it, read the text, use Apple Intelligence to understand what the text is about, and the prompt is, please create a less than 50 character long name for that image. And it renames the image based on the text that is inside. And that was something that bothered me for a while. I had thousands of screenshots in my downloads folder. And one day I told myself, one day I'm going to go through those images and I'm going to rename them based on what's inside. Now I don't need to do that anymore. It's done for me. And the good news is, so I have created the shortcut, but it's also now looking at where it's running. So if it's on a Mac with the latest version of macOS and an Apple Silicon chip, that it knows it can call upon Apple Intelligence. And it will do it either using the local model or the cloud model. Apple has a private cloud compute version with a much better LLM in the cloud, and it's fully secure. But if the Mac is either an Intel Mac or a previous version of macOS, then it can revert to either using the ChatGPT the local desktop ChatGPT app on the Mac, open the ChatGPT app, and then ask ChatGPT to make the renaming. Or, worst case scenario, provided that you have an API key with OpenAI, it will then query ChatGPT on OpenAI's servers. And it's very quick. It's less than a second to provide. Obviously, then at that time, it will take the text that it has extracted from the picture, send it to OpenAI servers, ask ChatGPT, please give me a name that's less than 50 characters long, and then get back the response, and the shortcut will rename the image. And these are the kind of things that you can do today on a Mac that most people don't imagine they can do.
Wow. And there, everybody, is the piece of gold that you are going to be using, and I know you're going to be using. Shortcuts versus GPT. You're going to be doing a little race here, aren't you, to see which one feels best, but which one actually produces the results. Wow. Thank you, Damien. I've just got my weekend's activity planned now. I've got to do this coming weekend. I can just feel it. Damien, this has just been so good.
Yeah, I can give you a link to download to access that shortcut. So I have also created a companion a document, basically a user guide on where to download the shortcut, how to use the shortcut, how to create an API key if you need to, but in your case, you won't need that. Are you on Tahoe, Neil? Are you on the macOS 26 train already?
I haven't gone to that yet, but no. Again, intending to.
But then it doesn't matter, because in your case, it will see that you have the ChatGPT desktop app installed, and it will automatically use ChatGPT to do the renaming. So yeah, right. And so there's a user guide and a way to download the shortcut, and basically other explanations on how to further automate that AI renaming thing.
Brilliant. So we can include that in the description then. We'll include that as a link. Brilliant. Thank you, Damien. That's so good. And you've got a quiz on your website, haven't you, that once people complete the quiz, they get downloadable tips and ideas for how to kind of optimize their Mac. What's the link for that? Yeah, so that's macpreneur.com/quiz. And yeah, so it's I think 13 or 15 questions. I think it's 15 questions on different capabilities of the Mac. And what happens is that
then you get a score. And I have actually an ChatGPT action. It's an automation that then feeds your answers to ChatGPT via the server, via the API. And what ChatGPT, I've instructed ChatGPT to analyze your answers and provide a very personalized report with totally personalized recommendation. So nobody gets the same thing. It's not like if you score between 0 and 30, you get this. If you score, no. It's really fully. And I don't hide the fact that it's ChatGPT, because the top of the email, it's actually, hey, I'm the assistant from Damien, and I've copied Damien. I've put Damien in copy because I want Damien to look at my output as well. And yeah, you will get recommendations, links to Macpreneur episodes that are the most related to what you need, but also recommendations on Apple's website and app applications that recommend it for you to do that. And if you go also, so if you're really like a beginner on the Mac, you will get a link to 40 keyboard shortcuts that I recommend using on the Mac.
Wow. There is your gift for the day, everyone in the audience. Damien, this has just been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for kind of, just clarifying so many things that were hiding for me in plain sight and I didn't spot them. And I mean, this is the beauty of having an expert in the room, isn't it? Damien Schreurs, thank you so much for your time and wisdom today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Neil.